The armory was scheduled for deep cleaning every 6 months, and today was Ella Ramirez's turn to handle the precision weapons section. She'd been working as a civilian contractor at the naval base for 3 months, quietly maintaining equipment and staying invisible to the military personnel who barely noticed her existence. But when SEAL Commander Jake Reaper Sullivan walked into the armory and saw her expertly field stripping a Barrett M82A1 with the fluid precision of someone who knew exactly what they were doing, he stopped dead in his tracks. What he discovered next would shatter every assumption he'd made about the quiet woman who cleaned their weapons. Ella Ramirez was 29 years old, 5 feet 5 inches tall, with dark hair that she kept pulled back in a simple ponytail, and brown eyes that seemed to notice everything while revealing nothing. To the personnel at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, she was just another civilian contractor, part of the invisible workforce that kept the base running while the real warriors focused on their training and missions. She'd been hired through a standard government contracting agency to perform maintenance and cleaning duties in the special operations facilities. Her background check had been routine: high school diploma, some college, previous experience in equipment maintenance, clean criminal record, and references that verified she was reliable and hardworking. What the background check hadn't revealed was that Ella Ramirez had once been Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps, with a specialty designation that existed in very few official records and fewer personal memories. The morning started like any other. Ella arrived at 0600, signed in with base security, and made her way to Building 47, the Special Operations Equipment Facility, where Navy SEALs stored and maintained their specialized weapons and gear. Her assignment today was the quarterly deep clean of the precision weapons section, a job that required security clearance and attention to detail. Most of the civilian contractors avoided the precision weapons section. The rifles, scopes, and associated equipment were intimidating to people who had never handled military hardware, and the SEAL teams were particular about who touched their gear. But Ella had volunteered for the assignment, claiming she wasn't bothered by weapons and understood the importance of proper maintenance. The truth was more complex. Being around the rifles felt like coming home in a way that both comforted and tormented her. The precision weapons section contained some of the most advanced sniper systems in the world: Barrett M82, L1.50 caliber rifles, Remington M24 sniper weapon systems, Knight's Armament SR-25 designated marksman rifles, and various specialized optics that cost more than most people's cars. Each weapon was a precision instrument capable of reaching out and touching targets at distances that required mathematical calculations, environmental assessment, and shooting skills that took years to develop. Ella began her work methodically, starting with the cleaning stations and working her way toward the weapon racks. She'd learned to move efficiently and quietly, finishing her tasks without drawing attention from the SEALs, who occasionally came through to check equipment or prepare for training exercises. But today, something was different. In the back corner of the armory, partially hidden behind cleaning supplies and covered with a protective tarp, sat a Barrett M82A1 that looked like it hadn't been touched in months. The rifle was dusty, the protective covers were loose, and the scope mounting showed signs of neglect that made Ella's professional instincts twitch with disapproval. She approached the weapon with the same systematic care she applied to all her tasks, but as soon as her hands touched the Barrett, muscle memory kicked in with devastating clarity. The rifle felt familiar. The weight distribution, the balance point, the texture of the grip, everything about the weapon reminded her of similar rifles she'd handled under very different circumstances. Without conscious thought, her hands began moving through inspection procedures she hadn't performed in 3 years. Field stripping a Barrett M82A1 is not a simple task. The weapon is complex with multiple systems that require specific knowledge and considerable experience to disassemble properly. Most military personnel who aren't specifically trained on the system would struggle to break it down completely. Ella disassembled the rifle like she'd done it 1,000 times before, because she had. Her hands moved with unconscious efficiency, removing the barrel, bolt carrier, and trigger assembly with the fluid precision of someone who had once bet her life on understanding exactly how these weapons functioned. She inspected each component with the critical eye of a professional, noting minor wear patterns, checking tolerances, and evaluating the overall condition of the rifle with expertise that came from years of experience. She was so focused on the weapon that she didn't hear the boots on concrete approaching from behind. Commander Jake Reaper Sullivan had been a Navy SEAL for 15 years. He had served multiple combat deployments, led dozens of high-risk operations, and worked with some of the most elite marksmen in the military. He knew what professional weapons handling looked like, and he recognized expertise when he saw it. What he was seeing now made no sense. The civilian contractor who had been quietly cleaning their equipment for 3 months was field stripping a Barrett M82A1 with the kind of proficiency that Sullivan had only seen among master-level precision shooters. Her technique was flawless, her movements were confident, and her inspection procedures were following protocols that weren't taught in civilian circles. Sullivan stopped in the doorway and watched, his mind trying to reconcile what he was observing with what he knew about the woman performing the task. Ella completed her inspection and began reassembling the rifle. Again, her movements were precise and professional. She wasn't referring to any manual or hesitating over the procedure. She was working from memory, and that memory was clearly extensive. "Ma'am," Sullivan said quietly. Ella's hands froze. She turned slowly, the partially assembled rifle still in her grip, and found herself facing a man she recognized but had never spoken to directly. Commander Sullivan was in his late 30s, average height but powerfully built, with a kind of weathered face that came from years of outdoor operations and the intense eyes that marked experienced combat veterans. His uniform bore the insignia and decorations that identified him as Senior Special Operations Personnel. "Sir," Ella replied, carefully setting the rifle down on the cleaning mat. "That's some impressive weapons handling," Sullivan observed, his tone neutral but his eyes alert. "Where did you learn to field strip a Barrett?" Ella felt her carefully constructed cover story crumbling. For 3 months, she'd been just another invisible contractor, blending into the background and avoiding exactly this kind of attention. "I've worked around military equipment before, sir. You pick things up." Sullivan stepped closer, studying her face. "You pick things up?" "Ma'am, what I just watched was professional-level weapons maintenance. That's not something you pick up from casual exposure." Ella met his gaze steadily. "I'm thorough in my work, sir." "I can see that." Sullivan looked at the rifle, then back at her. "Mind if I ask about your background?" "Standard civilian contractor, sir. Background check on file with base security." Sullivan nodded slowly. "I'm sure it is. But background checks sometimes don't tell the whole story." The two of them stood in silence for a moment, each evaluating the other. Ella was calculating how much trouble she was in and whether her cover was completely blown. Sullivan was trying to decide whether he was looking at a potential security risk or something else entirely. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I'd appreciate a direct answer. Do you have military experience?" Ella considered her options. She could continue the deception, stick to her cover story, and hope Sullivan would let the matter drop. But the way he was looking at her suggested that wasn't going to happen. "Yes, sir. I do." "What branch?" "Marine Corps, MOS?" Ella hesitated. Military occupational specialty codes were specific, and hers was particularly specific. 0317, sir." Sullivan's expression changed immediately. "Scout sniper?" "Yes, sir." The revelation hung in the air between them. 0317 was the MOS code for Marine Corps Scout snipers, some of the most elite marksmen in the military. It wasn't a designation that was awarded lightly, and it wasn't a skill set that disappeared when someone left the service. "What's your real name?" Sullivan asked. "Ella Ramirez is my legal name, sir. I changed it after I left the service." "What was your military name?" "Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez." Sullivan studied her face, and Ella could see him accessing military databases in his mind, trying to place the name with records he might have encountered. "Rodriguez," he repeated. "Elena Rodriguez. Why does that name sound familiar?" Ella remained silent. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to help me out here. If you're former military working on this base under an assumed identity, that's something we need to discuss." "It's not an assumed identity, sir. I legally changed my name. My background check was accurate as far as it went, but incomplete." "Yes, sir." Sullivan walked over to a computer terminal in the corner of the armory. "Mind if I run a quick search?" Ella knew there was no point in objecting. "Go ahead, sir." Sullivan typed rapidly, accessing military personnel databases that required high-level security clearances. After a few minutes, he stopped typing and stared at the screen. "Holy shit," he said quietly. "Sir?" Sullivan turned to look at her with an expression that had completely changed from suspicion to something approaching awe. "Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, Marine Corps Scout Sniper, 2 tours in Afghanistan, confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 2,500 meters. Recipient of the Navy Cross for actions during Operation Red Dawn." Ella said nothing. "Says here you hold the unofficial record for the longest confirmed kill shot by a female Marine Corps sniper, 3,250 meters. That's over 2 miles. "Yes, sir." Sullivan stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked back at her. "It also says you left the service under medical discharge. Combat-related PTSD. "Yes, sir." "And now you're cleaning weapons in a SEAL armory under a different name. It's honest work, sir." Sullivan closed the database and walked back to where she was standing. "Ma'am, Elena, Ella, what do I call you?" "Ella, sir. That's who I am now." "Ella, I need to understand what's happening here. Are you working under your real identity because you're hiding from something or because you're running from something?" "Neither, sir. I'm working under my real identity because I needed a job that didn't involve shooting people, and civilian contractors don't get asked a lot of questions about their military background." "But you're working around weapons." "I'm cleaning weapons, sir." "There's a difference." Sullivan considered this. "Why here? Why this base, this job?" Ella looked at the Barrett rifle she'd been working on. "Because I understand these weapons, sir. I know how important proper maintenance is. I know what happens when equipment fails at the wrong moment. And because being around them without having to use them helps me remember that they're tools, not extensions of myself." Sullivan nodded slowly. "Therapy." "In a way, yes, sir. How long since you last fired a precision rifle?" 3 years, 2 months, sir, since you left the service." "Yes, sir." Sullivan looked at the rifle, then back at her. "Ella, I'm going to make a proposition." "Sir?" "We've got a training exercise next week, long-range precision shooting. Our regular sniper instructors are deployed, and we've been looking for someone with the qualifications to run the training." Ella felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Sir, I don't—" "Just training, Ella. No combat, no operational missions, just teaching young SEALs how to make long shots under controlled conditions." "Sir, I appreciate the offer, but I left that life behind." "I understand. But you also just demonstrated that you haven't lost the skills, and we have a problem that your skills could solve." Ella studied his face. "What kind of problem?" "We've got 12 SEAL candidates who need to qualify on precision shooting before they can complete their training. Without qualified instructors, they're going to fail. and failing means they don't become SEALs. Sir, there are other instructors. Not available, not with your level of expertise. Ella looked at the Barrett rifle again. The idea of holding a precision weapon with intent to shoot, even in a training environment, made her hands shake slightly. Sir, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. What if I told you that one of those candidates is a woman? Marine transfer. Same background as you, trying to become the first female SEAL graduate in her class. Ella looked up sharply. Sir? Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, Marine Corps designated marksman, trying to transition to SEALs. She's struggling with the precision shooting requirements because she's never had access to the kind of advanced training that you received. Why are you telling me this, sir? Because maybe she needs an instructor who understands what it's like to be the only woman in a room full of men who don't think she belongs there. Ella felt something shift in her chest. Sir, I'm not sure. 1 week, Ella. Help us with this training cycle. If it doesn't work out, you go back to cleaning weapons and nobody ever asks you to pick up a rifle again. Ella stared at the Barrett for a long moment. Sir, what if I've lost it? What if the skills aren't there anymore? Then we find out together. But I don't think you've lost anything. I think you've just been hiding it. Sullivan walked over to a locked cabinet and retrieved a small device that looked like a rangefinder. Tell me what this is. Ella looked at the device. Kestrel 5700 Elite Weather Meter. Wind speed, barometric pressure, temperature, humidity, ballistic computer integration for long-range shooting solutions. And this? He showed her another device. PLRF 25 laser rangefinder, accurate to 25 kilometers, integrated GPS and compass functions. Sullivan nodded. And if I wanted to make a shot at 1,500 meters in a 15-knot crosswind with a temperature differential of 20 degrees? Without thinking, Ella began calculating. Depends on ammunition, but assuming M33 ball, you're looking at approximately 47 MOA elevation adjustment, 12 MOA windage correction, accounting for Coriolis effect and atmospheric density changes. She stopped mid-sentence, realizing that she'd just performed complex ballistic calculations from memory without hesitation. Sullivan smiled. You haven't lost anything, Ella. You've just been pretending you have. Sir, I left the service because I couldn't handle the pressure anymore. The responsibility of taking lives, the weight of every shot, the knowledge that people lived or died based on my decisions. I understand. But this isn't about taking lives. This is about teaching people to protect lives. These SEALs are going to be in situations where precision shooting might be the only thing standing between them and catastrophic failure. They need to learn from someone who's been there. Ella looked around the armory, at the weapons and equipment that represented capabilities she'd spent years developing and 3 years trying to forget. Sir, if I do this, if I agree to help with the training, what guarantees do I have that it stops there? You have my word that this is training only. No operational missions, no combat deployments, no pressure to return to active duty. Just 1 week of teaching people skills that might save their lives someday. And after that you go back to whatever life you want to live, but maybe with the knowledge that you used your abilities to help people instead of hiding from them. Ella picked up the Barrett rifle and held it properly for the first time in 3 years. The weight felt familiar, comfortable, like greeting an old friend she'd been avoiding. Sir, I'll need access to the range, adequate ammunition, and confirmation that this is purely voluntary. Done. And I'll need to evaluate the candidates first to see what level of instruction they require. Absolutely. And sir, if I determine that any of them aren't ready for advanced precision shooting, I reserve the right to recommend additional training before they attempt qualification. Sullivan nodded. Your range, your rules. Ella looked at the rifle one more time, then carefully set it down. When do we start? Tomorrow 0600, range 7, precision shooting course. I'll be there, sir. Sullivan headed toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Ella? Yes, sir? Thank you. You're going to make a difference for those kids. After he left, Ella finished reassembling the Barrett rifle with hands that were steadier than they'd been in months. For the first time since leaving the Marine Corps, she felt like she was moving toward something instead of running away from it. The next morning, Ella arrived at range 7:30 minutes early. She'd spent most of the night reviewing training protocols and reminding herself that teaching precision shooting was fundamentally different from employing it in combat situations. The range was a state-of-the-art facility designed specifically for long-range precision training. Multiple firing positions at distances ranging from 100 to 1,500 meters, environmental monitoring equipment, and advanced target systems that could simulate various scenarios and conditions. Ella set up her equipment methodically, spotting scopes, ballistic computers, weather monitoring devices, and ammunition sorted by lot number and ballistic characteristics. She checked wind flags, verified range distances, and established her instructor position where she could observe all firing positions simultaneously. At exactly 600 hours, 12 SEAL candidates arrived with Commander Sullivan, 11 men and 1 woman, all in standard training uniforms and carrying the focused intensity that marked serious military professionals. "Good morning," Ella said, her voice carrying the authority she'd developed as a Marine Corps instructor. "I'm Ella Ramirez, and I'll be conducting your precision shooting instruction for the next week." She could see some of the candidates exchanging glances. She was clearly younger than several of them, and her civilian contractor status raised obvious questions about her qualifications. "Before we begin," Ella continued, "I want to establish some basic facts. This is not a competition between you and me, or between any of you and each other. This is about developing skills that might save your life or the lives of your teammates in operational environments." She gestured toward the rifle range. Precision shooting is not about being tough or proving your marksmanship. It's about understanding ballistics, environmental factors, equipment limitations, and human factors that affect shot placement at extended ranges. One of the male candidates raised his hand. "Ma'am, what's your background in precision shooting?" Ella had expected this question. "Marine Corps Scout Sniper 0317. 2 combat deployments, multiple confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. The atmosphere on the range changed immediately. Every candidate was now paying complete attention. "Any other questions about qualifications before we begin?" Staff Sergeant Maria Santos raised her hand. "Ma'am, what's the longest confirmed shot you've made?" Ella looked at Santos, a compact athletic woman with the intense focus that marked dedicated professionals. 3,250 meters, approximately 2 miles. The range fell completely silent. "Now that we've established that I know what I'm talking about," Ella continued, "let's talk about what you need to learn." The first day of training was dedicated to fundamentals: rifle setup, scope adjustment, basic ballistic calculations, and environmental assessment. Ella moved between candidates, correcting positions, explaining concepts, and evaluating their existing skill levels. By the end of the first day, she'd identified the strengths and weaknesses of each candidate. Most had solid basic marksmanship skills, but lacked the advanced knowledge needed for extreme-range precision shooting. Santos showed exceptional potential, but had been taught techniques that were adequate for designated marksman roles, but insufficient for true precision work. "Santos," Ella called as the candidates were cleaning their equipment, "stay behind for a few minutes." After the others had left, Ella approached the young Marine. "Tell me about your background." "Scout Sniper School graduate, ma'am. 2 deployments as a designated marksman, longest confirmed kill at 1,200 meters. "Good shooting." "Why the transfer to SEALS?" Santos hesitated. "Ma'am, I want to be in a unit where my skills are valued for what they are, not questioned because of what I am." Ella nodded. "I understand. How are you finding the SEAL training?" "Challenging, ma'am, but I'm keeping up. I can see that. Your fundamentals are solid, but your technique for extreme range shooting needs work." "Yes, ma'am." Ella studied the younger woman's face. "Santos, can I give you some advice?" "Yes, ma'am. Don't try to prove you belong here by being better than everyone else. Prove you belong here by being the best version of yourself. There's a difference." "Ma'am?" Excellence speaks for itself, but trying too hard to prove excellence often leads to mistakes that undermine the very thing you're trying to demonstrate. Santos nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. I understand. Good. Tomorrow we're moving to 800-meter targets. I want you to focus on consistency rather than perfection. Build your confidence on shots you can make reliably before attempting shots that challenge your limits. The second day of training progressed to intermediate range shooting. Ella introduced advanced ballistic calculations, multiple target engagements, and shooting from various positions under time pressure. Santos performed well, but Ella could see her pushing herself to match the performance of candidates who had more experience with the specific equipment they were using. During the afternoon session, Santos missed 3 consecutive shots at 800 meters, shots that should have been well within her capabilities. Santos, take a break, Ella called. Ma'am, I can make these shots. I know you can. That's not the problem. Ella walked over to where Santos was positioned. What's happening in your head right now? Ma'am, I'm calculating windage and elevation correctly, but my shots are going wide. That's not what I asked. What's happening in your head? Santos was quiet for a moment. I'm thinking about the other candidates, ma'am. About whether they're watching me miss. And how is that affecting your shooting? It's making me rush the shot, ma'am. I'm not following through properly. Ella nodded. Santos, do you know why I hold the record for the longest confirmed kill by a female Marine sniper? Because you're an exceptional shooter, ma'am. No, because when I made that shot, I wasn't thinking about being a female Marine sniper. I was thinking about being a Marine sniper. The target was 3,250 meters away. The wind was gusting at 18 knots, and my spotter had identified a high-value target that needed to be eliminated. I made the shot because it was the right shot to make, not because I needed to prove anything to anyone. Santos looked at her with growing understanding. Excellence, Ella continued, is about forgetting everything except the task in front of you. The moment you start shooting to prove you belong, you stop shooting to hit the target. Yes, ma'am. Reset your position, take your time, make the shot you know how to make. Santos took a deep breath, settled into her shooting position, and went through her pre-shot routine with deliberate care. When she fired, the target indicated a center hit at 800 meters. Better, Ella said. Again. By the end of the week, all 12 candidates had qualified on precision shooting at ranges up to 1,200 meters. Santos had emerged as one of the top performers, demonstrating both technical skill and the mental discipline required for extreme range shooting. On the final day, Commander Sullivan joined them on the range to observe qualification trials. Impressive work, he told Ella as they watched the candidates complete their final exercises. You've taken their shooting to a completely different level. They had the basic skills, sir. They just needed to understand how to apply them systematically. Santos looks particularly strong. She's going to be an exceptional SEAL, sir. She just needed to learn to trust her training. Sullivan nodded. Ella, I have a question for you. Sir? How do you feel about what you've accomplished this week? Ella thought about the question. Sir, I feel like I've found a way to use my skills that doesn't require me to carry the weight of taking lives. And I feel like maybe there's a place for me in this community that doesn't involve hiding who I used to be. Sullivan smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Because I have a proposition for you. Sir, we need a permanent precision shooting instructor, someone who can work with SEAL candidates, develop advanced training programs, and mentor the next generation of precision marksmen. Ella looked out at the range where Santos was coaching one of the male candidates through a difficult shot. Sir, that's a big change from cleaning weapons. Yes, it is, but it's also a chance to build something meaningful instead of just maintaining what already exists. What would the position involve? Training, primarily. Some curriculum development. Occasional consulting on operational planning when precision shooting expertise is required. But no operational deployments unless you specifically volunteer. Ella considered the offer. 3 months ago, she'd been hiding from her past, afraid that her military experience would define her forever. Now she was being offered a chance to use that experience in a way that felt purposeful rather than burdensome. Sir, Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really run that database search? You could have just let me finish cleaning the rifle and never said anything. Sullivan was quiet for a moment. Because I recognize the way you handled that weapon, Ella. I've worked with enough precision shooters to know what expertise looks like, and because I thought you might be someone who was hiding from something valuable instead of something dangerous. And if you'd been wrong, then I would have been wrong. But I wasn't. Ella watched Santos complete her final qualification shot, a perfect center hit at 1,200 meters under challenging wind conditions. Sir, if I take this position, I want to develop a mentorship program specifically for women entering special operations roles. Done. And I want to research advanced training techniques that could improve overall program effectiveness. Absolutely. And sir, I want to be evaluated on my performance as an instructor, not on my past as an operator. Sullivan extended his hand. Deal. 6 months later, Ella stood in the same armory where Commander Sullivan had discovered her true identity. But now she was there in her official capacity as Senior Precision Shooting Instructor for Naval Special Warfare. The Barrett M82A1 that had started everything was clean, properly maintained, and ready for use by students who would learn to employ it with the kind of skill and judgment that Ella had spent years developing. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had graduated from SEAL training and was now serving with SEAL Team 3, where her precision shooting skills had already proven valuable in operational environments. She still called Ella for advice occasionally, and they maintained the mentor relationship that had begun on Range 7. But more importantly, Ella had found a way to honor her military experience without being defined by its more difficult aspects. She was using skills that had once been about taking lives to help others develop capabilities that might save lives. The transformation from Elena Rodriguez, combat sniper, to Ella Ramirez, cleaning contractor, to Ella Ramirez, precision shooting instructor, had taught her that identity wasn't about running from the past or being trapped by it. Sometimes it was about finding new ways to use old skills in service of something larger than yourself. And sometimes the most important targets weren't the ones you hit with bullets, but the ones you reached with knowledge, experience, and the understanding that expertise shared is expertise multiplied. In a world where precision mattered, Ella had found her place not as someone who hid from her capabilities, but as someone who used them to help others discover their own. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.